Good day, Sir D. Good day, classmates. We are Group 6 and about to present our case in our counseling sessions and the applications of behavior therapy used in our sessions. Upon our intake interview that was conducted last March 14, 2022, we were able to get the background and the concern of our client. So his name is JM, 22-year-old boy, third-year college student, living together with his parents and his elder sister. Seek for counseling interventions due to the nicotine dependence. He started smoking since 2014 and has a 5 to 6 daily intake of cigarettes before the interventions. He attempted to quit from smoking, but he experienced nicotine withdrawal symptoms such as restlessness and irritability. So after the intake interview, we, the student interventionists of JM, decided to use the behavioral therapy in his smoking behavior. So we use behavior therapy because we focus on the observable behavior and measurable behavior, which is the smoking behavior. So the interventionists were able to find out the antecedent or determinants of GM smoking behavior and what are the consequences that maintain the behavior. We also use the functional assessment, which identify the maintaining conditions and how this behavior was sustained for a long period of time. And also we use self-management program we use self-management program to JM in order to record the number of cigarettes that he consumes every day, and it will be assessed during his sessions with the student interventionist. Here are the functional assessment in JM smoking behavior, and we found out that the antecedents are learned from her eldest sister who used to smoke, peer influence, absences of inhibiting agents or the punishments, nicotine dependence. And the consequence of his smoking behavior is stress reduction. So we, the interventionists, the student interventionists, and the client set a clear, concrete, and well understood goal after the sessions, which is here on the PowerPoint, to reduce the consumption of cigarettes, dependence on nicotine, and to switch this habit into more productive and less risky behaviors.
So for the first session summary, even before our session started, we made the monitoring sheets to evaluate, and we found that sometimes he had a high intake of cigarette and sometimes not. We found out that for GM, smoking is a routine. And as our conversation deepened, we asked what his motivation to stop, and he said that he was once a dancer. When it was still face to face, he noticed that he was getting a little out of breath. And his greatest motivation is for his health. So while we were talking, he mentioned that his goal after this session was to completely quit smoking cigarette or even just reduce it. He has been using vape for a long time, but he's still looking for nicotine massage on his body. That is why he stopped. But due to the influence of his girlfriend, he is considering using vape again. It is better than cigarette because it has less nicotine. We asked him if he had tried to stop, and he said that he had tried once to quit all day, but the next day he doubled his cigarette intake. But when we asked how he felt when he stopped smoking, he said that it felt good. So he mentioned that he was drowsy when he slept late. He also woke up late, and that is why he smoked fewer cigarettes. We found out that in his family, he first learned to smoke in his older sister's home, and there's no one get angry with him or punishes him when he uses cigarette. When he is with his friend, he also smoke a lot. Social influence is also one of the reason. So apart from these three, he uses cigarette as a coping mechanism when he is stressed in online games, and we saw that his stress management is very unproductive. So we let him explore a lot of healthy coping mechanism that can relieve his stress. And after our session with JM, we make a suggestion to the next interventionist to give JM many ways to cope with stress and allow him to discover things he like to do aside from playing online games and smoking. So for the next session, Roxanne.
Okay, for the second session, the goal for this session was to help him come up with ideas on how he could help himself cope up with stress and present him ideas on alternatives to cigarettes. Of course, the session started with asking how he is, and again, we asked what triggers him when to smoke. His answer was mainly because of stress. We started talking about his daily exercises since he answered that going outside and walking around are one of the things that he does to be physically Fifth, we have suggested that he maintain that and at least do a 10 to 15 minutes of walk every day. Another thing was his sleeping habits. This might be one of the factors for his stress since he mentioned that his body clock is a mess and he tends to sleep late at night. So we talked about monitoring his sleeping routine too. We have no problem when it comes to his diet since he mentioned that he isn't really fond of eating unhealthy foods such as junk foods. Okay, moving on to alternatives to nicotine, we suggested consuming a candy or a vape. He already mentioned that he tries to eat candy sometimes as a substitute to cigarette, but since he usually carry a pack of cigarette in his bag, it is more accessible than the candy itself. So we talked about how he should put his cigarettes somewhere else that isn't exactly accessible to him and try putting candies across his things or any places that are usually within his reach. For the suggestions, the first would be coming up with possible hobbies with the client. The second would be ask about his sleeping habits and his exercise routine. The third one would be assessing his journal that was assigned to him and check for changes. And lastly, of course, remind him to reward himself. For the next session, this will be discussed by Camille and Diana.
So for the third session, prior to the succeeding sessions, the client intake of cigarettes was around 7 to 8 sticks. But the week before our third session, the intake was lessened because as per him, he only takes 2 to 5 sticks per day. JM mentioned that he is using vape at the same time, which is shown in the screen, the Relax Pods. Regarding the purchase of cigarettes, it became only per stick instead per box. The client also gives reward to himself whenever he survives a day with less than intake of cigarettes, which is burger, his favorite food, as a reward. Aside from monitoring of cigarettes, the interventionist instructed him to add a record of his sleep routine, as he mentioned that having a lack of sleep is one of cause of his stress. The following week, JM said that they will have an academic break. Therefore, we suggested that he can use that time to do exercise, specifically dancing, since he is a dancer. Moreover, the interventionist recommended meditation whenever he is experiencing difficulty in sleeping. The interventionist continued to show motivation towards JM in taking down the use of cigarettes. For the next presenter, may I call on Ms. Diane Castañeda?
Hi, so in succession to Camille's statement, this session can then be summarized as the continuity of JM's motivation. We mitigated his coping mechanism over his stressors and alternatives of how to lessen his smoking. Interventionists dug deeper into how a healthy and active lifestyle can dominantly contribute to his quit smoking journey. We also did a wellness check as to how journaling aids in reaching his goals. Additionally, client was reminded to be mindful of rewarding himself. Interventionists evoke the client of the goal, which is to lessen gradually his smoking to avoid relapse. Recommendation for the next sessions are the following. Client was asked to carry on with monitoring his sleep and do his absolute best to have a complete cycle, which is ideally 7 to 9 hours daily. Maintain an active and healthy lifestyle with diet. To do virtual meditation along with the interventionists. So moving on to the next session, which is the fourth. This session, we witnessed how much the client's cigarette consumption improved. We can now say that it is far lower than when we first began. As prior sessions, we determined whether he was improving in his self-management when stressed, and the answer was yes, he was. He still can't stop rewarding himself, and because he took an academic break, he was able to improve other good coping mechanisms more effectively. Following that, we meditated so that there were no heavy thoughts before he went to sleep that caused him to take another cigarette. And we saw that client accomplish his goal. So we can conclude that this is his final counseling, and his next counseling will be merely an update. And we also congratulated him on his success. Now I will pass the floor to the next speaker. Her name is Miss Carla Laus.
And for the last session, the interventionist asked JM regarding his smoking updates. Since we recommended JM to meditate daily before sleeping, we decided to do a meditation for this session. The interventionist played music through Google Meet and asked the client to meditate. And after that, the interventionist discussed the long-term and short-term benefits of the meditation. For the short term, it includes relaxation and improvement of sleep quality. And for the long term, it will increase self-awareness, creativity, and reduce impacts in our body. And here we have JM's weekly cigarette consumption. And as you can see, from week 1 to week 4, his cigarette consumption decreased. And next is the documentation of the first session up to the last session. And here are the student interventionists for this case presentation. That's all, and thank you.
I experience here in the counseling the feeling of fulfillment, having the ability to use my knowledge in counseling to help other people, especially our client. I was also motivated to pursue more and to learn more about psychology, and through this counseling, I see myself more as a counselor and maybe a psychotherapist in the future.
The experience I had through the sessions was at first, honestly speaking, I am a little bit nervous since this is the very first time we will handle a client in an intervention. After every session, I feel so overwhelmed that I am able to give help towards other people, and the feeling of gratefulness that you became part of the client's healing. I am at that point that every time I see the smile of the client after the session and the way they say thank you to us really makes me smile and happy.
One of the experiences I'd probably never forget was the feeling that I was able to help someone through the use of counseling with my knowledge. That feeling of fulfillment and the idea that someone was better because of my help was extraordinary. It was different from the feeling when your friends simply ask you for advices.
I have experienced how hard it is to feel the need to fight the urge or dependence, and that it takes courage and optimism to have really strong directed action mindset to quit from it.
I experienced being happy and excited because I didn't think I'd be able to help and that I'd be able to utilize what I've learned in counseling. It also feels simple because our client is easy to talk to and extremely outspoken about his goals, motivation, and opinions, making our job as student interventionist easier.
I experienced the feeling of fulfillment and happiness at the same time because I was able to use my knowledge in counseling and help other people feel better.
I learned how to empathize to other people, to see their subjective world, and to understand them based on how they see their problem and not based on how I see their problems. And I think that the character that I learned here in our counseling sessions is to become their safe zone, because I realized that not all people feel safe to confide. So I want to see myself as their safe zone through empathetic listening because I truly care.
I learned to be more understanding of the people around me. Before, my perspective was just small, but after the intervention, I became more aware that sometimes people are like icebergs, that what we see is not just that. There is so much more hidden in them that sometimes they don't show because they are afraid that they might not be understood. That is why I myself became one of the instruments to help them feel that there are still people who are willing to listen and understand them.
We had 3 clients, and out of those 3, 2 were successful, and I learned how to set apart what I feel from what the client feels, because I have to take a step back and try to understand their situation as them and as a counselor.
I've learned that self-compassion and self-care should be given to yourself at all costs and in all sorts. Being kind to yourself as you go through each transition in life is essential, because choosing kindness will most likely help you go a long way, not just in your physical, but in your mental and emotional stamina as well.
I've learned to extend my horizon and better comprehend those around me. I had discovered that no single counseling philosophy works for all clients. Also learned that the impact of the problem varies depending on who you ask. While it may be a little for me, it may be a huge for others.
I learned that you have to trust the process, trust yourself, and trust your client. You have to be professional, but at the same time, be a learner. And another thing I've learned is you have to listen to them also. Through listening, it will become clear how much good you are doing in the session.
So heartbreaker, I've been working you up.
This counseling activity is a great experience for me and a heartfelt activity, especially to see clients getting better, dealing with their battles, or changing their maladaptive behaviors into a healthy one. But what I like here the most in this activity is so unique, and we conduct it beyond our class hours and beyond the book. So we were able to apply our understanding, stretch our knowledge not only in the classroom but also in the practice of counseling.
The intervention we had really served as a practice to me even for just a short time. From searching for possible clients, making of informed consent, conducting an initial interview, the experience that I had, especially when we conducted the very first session, especially the interaction and conversation with the client, the lessons I had learned really impacted me to become more effective as a psychology student.
Those sessions taught me a lot of things, and one of them is that I was able to challenge myself with learning new ideas on how to handle different situations with different clients. Those sessions helped me realize things that were not in the book, and you'll only learn them once you experience them.
The sessions help me become more effective psychologists by having compassion with boundaries. This is essential so we can have an efficient approach to any case. I know that addiction or dependence to something is a disease, and it needs to be addressed by proper channels, such as therapy sessions or medications if need be. As a therapist, I strongly believe that we should always let our clients know that we care, but most importantly, they must help themselves in order to have a better recovery. And that we should make our clients feel that they are definitely worthy of recovery.
This counseling made me feel a lot better since, even though I'm not yet a licensed psychologist, I have learned a lot, and most importantly, I help others. I state that a simple phrase can influence and help someone.
The most rewarding thing of being a student interventionist is being able to offer the clients your help, and the fact that they have trusted you and give you the opportunity to listen to them. And I was happy that we are able to use our knowledge properly and understand other people's situation.
I'm on to you. Come on, heartbreaker, giving